Okay, number 4.
I'm thinking it's C.
Okay,
Yeah, C or B.
That's what I'm
see.
thinking.
Okay. So, mathematics professor was recruited by the military to help the war effort. Okay. So, Hopper's subsequent career would involve more than just equations, though. As a higher pioneering computer programmer, Hopper would help usher the digital age. Okay, so this is how we kind of have to think about this. Is this two independent clauses? Because then you can't just separate them with a comma because that would make a comma splice. So the most common mistake I see people make with SAT grammar is they'll use a comma when there's two independent clauses. And you can't do that. That would make a comma splice. The only time you can actually use a comma with two independent clauses is if you have one of the fanboys, a comma conjunction. So that's for, and, nor, but, or, fan, yet, or so. So if you have comma that word, then you can have an independent clause and an independent clause. So in this sentence, Hopper's subsequent career would involve more than just equations, though that's an independent clause that stands by its own. As a pioneering computer programmer, Hopper would help usher in the digital age. That's another independent clause. So between B and D, you can't just have the sentence with a comma because that would make it a comma splice, right? It's a run-on sentence. It's too long. And C, if we think about this logically, like Hopper's subsequent career would involve more than just equations, though as a pioneering computer programmer, Hopper would usher in the digital age, would help usher the digital age. So this though has to be with this first sentence because he's involving more than just equations, though. They're kind of saying he's not doing just equations, right? So that though idea has to go with that first sentence. So the answer is actually A. So for number 3, we saw that most common use of a colon, which is like when you're presenting a list. Another way that you could use a colon again is to elaborate with an idea. So the first sentence, Hopper's subsequent career would involve more than just equations, though. And we're presenting the idea that as a pioneering computer programmer, Hopper would help usher in the digital age. So whenever you see a sentence like this and you see that there's two independent clauses, you should first remember that you can't use a comma to separate that unless you have a conjunction, because that would make it a comma splice. So knowing that idea, we can rule out B and D because those don't have anything to separate the independent clause from the independent clause. So then between A and B, we kind of have to think about it logically, right? Does the word though go with the first sentence or does it go with the second sentence? And then you can kind of logically conclude that it has to go with the first sentence. So A is a better answer. These bacteria work well. And then they're saying these bacteria are able to remove all this dirt without harming artwork, without creating harmful byproducts. So they're actually even more effective, right? It's not disagreement. However, would be when you have like a disagreement. So it's not A or D. What do you guys think the best answer could be between B or C?
B.
So B, in many cases. So they're saying that there have been impressive results. And in many cases, we see the bacteria successfully metabolizing centuries of oil, glue, dirt. So in this case, B was the best answer choice. So I think what's a little bit tricky is that when we use transition words like in addition or additionally, we don't really think about whether it's a new idea or are we elaborating on the same idea, because in our normal writing, in addition can be used even when we're elaborating on the same point, right? But for this practice set in particular, they're trying to emphasize that in addition, additionally, those are more used for new ideas. And then if there's a better transition word that's more logically fitting, they want to use that instead. Number 7,
B.
B is by contrast. So we are disagreeing with something, right? So In a heated debate in biogeography, the field is divided between dispersalists. Okay, so that's their first point. So we're trying to see the transition between that sentence and there are those who argue that dispersal is the most crucial determining factor, and those who insist vicariance is. So is that a contrasting idea? They're saying it's divided between dispersalists and vicariancists. And then they're talking about basically what the dispersalists think and what the vicariancists think. They're kind of restating that idea. So it's not by contrast because it's the same idea. They're kind of just rewording it, right?
Would it be A?
Kind of like how I was trying to hint at what the answer was because A is saying one thing, right? I'm using A as being the first sentence, and then B, which is the second sentence, is essentially just stating that sentence again. Furthermore is used kind of like additionally, right? When you're adding a new point, but we're not really adding a new idea. We're restating the idea that was already presented, right? They're saying there's disagreement between this person and this person, but these are hard words. Like we don't know what dispersalists think. We don't know what vicariancists think. And they're restating that statement, but they're saying there are those who argue that dispersal is the most important and those who argue that vicariance is the most important. So they're restating it. So the answer is actually D. So that is. So let's read it through with C and D because those are kind of the only answers we're left with. So in a heated debate, the field is dividing between group A and group B. That is, there are those who argue that A is the most crucial factor and those who argue that B is the crucial factor. So again, similarly, like these are all answers that, except for B, which is a disagreement answer. Furthermore, similarly, these are things that are kind of used with like an agreeing point, like in addition or like similarly. But in this text, they're really just restating the first sentence. So the most logical transition between A and then restating A differently is like that is. So that is, there are those who argue that A is more important than B.